I had a friend that was sending me these undiagnosed ADHD starter pack memes that were like hitting way too close to home. And I kind of like got diagnosed with ADD when I was 19, but not legitimately. It was by my doctor, but like he basically made me fill out a 30 question self-assessment with pretty generic questions like, I have a hard time paying attention for more than 30 minutes at a time. Like, and then you had to rate like on a scale of 1 to 10 where you were. And then at the end, he just kind of adds up your ADHD score. And then he's like, so do you want Ritalin or I think Vyvanse was I don't remember. There was like a few options and I was like, are you kidding me? That's like the whole test. There's not like any kind of actual like attention or like, I don't know. I kind of thought there would be some kind of brain scan.
Yeah.
In my pediatrician's office. Anyway, so like he offered to put me on medication at the time, but he was like, you've made it through school this far. So clearly you're not like at a point where you really have to have it. And so I kind of was like, I'm just going to wait and like, not do medication for now. And maybe, if I need it, I'll give you a call. And then I just kind of got through college and kind of trudged along. And then, my friend though started sending me all these memes that were getting like really, really specific. And I was like, okay, maybe I do need to kind of like look into this, see if this is actually a thing. And like, I think I've kind of been in a weird place because I just moved home and I'm like trying to figure out like what I'm doing with my life. Not that I'm like restarting, but it's kind of like, okay, what now? College is over. What is the next, I don't know, section of my life look like? And so I found this book online called Finally Focused that was written by a doctor who, he's like an actual medical doctor, but he's not the type that where he thinks like medication or medicine is like the end all be all for everybody. But he's also not like crunchy, like anti-vax, like, you know what I mean? Like nice balanced perspective.
Yeah.
And
That's rare these days.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like you're one or the other. Either like medication is everything or it's like, causes, or medication or vaccination is the reason for every problem in your life. But so one of the things he talked about was magnesium. And so I started taking it like back in January. And I think it's like, it's weird. Well, here's the thing. I can't really compare it to medication because I never did meds or took meds, did meds. Like, they're like hard drugs. I never took meds, but I've talked to some of my friends who have, and they just kind of explained, like, oh yeah, when I started taking it, like, within an hour, like, I immediately felt a difference. And I think with stuff like magnesium or any kind of nutritional change, it can take, like, months before there's like any kind of noticeable, and I wouldn't even say like I'm at a point where like I'm like hyper focused or I'm able to just like zone in on stuff, but I have found myself, I think, much more able to connect. Like I'm almost becoming like aware of when my brain is starting to kind of like and I can kind of bring it back in, if that makes sense. And
that's new.
That's new. Yeah. And being able to like make lists in my head and kind of put things in order. I think before, like, I always would have to like write things out, and that was always a way to kind of help me organize information, because it kind of felt like I would say the inside of my brain kind of felt like there was this very narrow like doorway at the front of my brain, and all my thoughts were trying to get out at the same time. And they would just kind of all like run at the door and like, and they'd all hit it at the same time. And then they would just fall over and then like fall asleep. And I would just kind of go into this like very kind of zoned out, almost like Zen. But it wasn't really like a Zen, like, oh, I feel it. It was more of just like, I'm really mentally exhausted.
So you gave up. So
then I would just give up and like kind of check out. And I feel like now it's like I can like make my, again, it's not like I'm suddenly like this super focused, like highly like I'm on Adderall or something, but I can like, okay, I can catch like, okay, Josh, like slow down, just one at a time, get your thoughts out the door. And I've been able to kind of like, if I'm looking at a task that feels overwhelming or feels like it's going to be really tedious, like I'm able to kind of look at it and just kind of one at a time line the steps up of like what I need to do. Whereas I think before I would always have to like sit down, write everything out, and then I felt like, okay, now I can do this. It doesn't feel as overwhelming. And I think that has been probably the biggest benefit of taking magnesium supplements. But it's, I think what is hard is like you want it to instantly like fix your brain or like make you immediately feel different. And I think any kind of nutritional change takes a lot longer, but in that you end up, I think, making much more sustainable changes just like in your life in general. So like one thing that I think has maybe kept me from making certain changes in my life, like for instance taking magnesium every day. That seems like it's like a pretty simple thing, like yeah, you just have to take a little supplement every day, but a lot of times my schedule was so inconsistent, like my wake up schedule and my sleep schedule were so inconsistent, so like I have also had to like adjust that and say, okay, I'm gonna like go to bed and get up at the same time every single day. And
it's like a healthy byproduct.
Yeah. And then from there, it's like you can make the adjustments taking supplements, or I like stopped eating gluten because I think that was one of the biggest things that was causing my brain fog. Like, and even now, if I like accidentally eat some, I can immediately, like in about an hour, I can tell, because I will just immediately get really, really foggy. And I'm not saying that gluten is like everybody's reason for every issue in their life. Like I think everybody's chemistry and biology is different. But I think that for a lot of people, there is some kind of like almost like an inflammatory response in your body that can be causing issues, sometimes in your mind. Just from what I've read, it can cause inflammation in like your prefrontal cortex. So what that'll look like is you just get really, really foggy, and it's almost like you're asleep while you're awake. But it can also like cause inflammation in your joints and your knees and your, and again, I don't think everybody has an issue with gluten. Like I know some people that eat a ton of bread and for whatever reason, they're like able to like hyper focus on things. And just like I know some people that like if they even touch dairy, they're like throwing up or they're immediately shitting their pants. Like it's, whereas I can eat dairy and like usually it's not, I mean, I might get like a little diarrhea later, but it's not like
just a little.
Yeah, well, it's not like,
no biggie.
Oh, this is affecting my quality of life. Yeah, it just makes things go easier, I guess. I don't know. I don't think diarrhea is that bad. Anyway.
Used to be deadly, but now it's nothing.
I don't know. I'm just like, whatever. It's just a little more time on the toilet. But so I think like with stuff like ADD and ADHD though, I think a lot of times ADD or ADHD is kind of just a blanket that's thrown on like a bunch of different problems. Like for some people, their ADHD or ADD is a lot more like hyperactive, and I don't feel like I've had that issue as much. Or some people, it makes them really like angry and irritable. I'd say my biggest thing is like brain fog, as well as like probably some poor impulse control. But I don't even like saying that I'm ADD or ADHD, because I think that kind of implies that there's like this specific programming in my brain that there's nothing that can be done about it. And I think some of it's like, I just think sometimes like the way we live we just kind of assume is like how we're supposed to be living. And what I mean by the way we live is like constantly diverting our attention with our mobile devices, constantly like flipping out phones, constantly escaping whatever present moment we're in. I think for a lot of people, like that has kind of trained their brains to always be like ready to jump, if that makes sense. And I think if you're someone who just is more prone to be a little more impulsive anyway, maybe just because of your personality and personal history, like I think things like mobile devices, as well as like if you eat a bunch of sugar, I don't know, I don't think it's like
it can exacerbate it maybe.
Yeah. And I think that the like you can be having like ADD or ADHD symptoms, and I think there are different issues at different levels that can be kind of causing them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm most curious just about your own experience and like if you've been like the order that you've been able to create with new habits and with like some supplements is like fascinating to me because it's like something's been working for you.
Yeah.
Whether it works at large is another question.
And like I think something for me too, I mean some of it was even like emotional and spiritual. Like I had this idea in my mind that if I was a like an orderly person or an organized person, it meant that I had a stick up my ass. Like, that's kind of, because I knew people in my life who, like, that's kind of how I thought of them, and they were very organized and orderly, and, like, even though that was probably something that I, like, secretly kind of wished I could be, I kind of just had this mindset that, like, oh, if I'm, if I'm structured, that's not a good thing. That means that I'm living too safely, too comfortably, and it's like, no, like, because living chaotically is not great either, you know? I think all throughout college, I just was very, very impulsive, very chaotic. I think some of it was, again, like on a deep, almost spiritual level, like what I was valuing. And I think what I was valuing was constant stimulation or need to escape my life. Like I can't handle what's going on here, so I need to go to Skyline at 1 a.m. or like, like seriously, it's like, okay, I already ate a bunch of food, or like,
all your examples you're giving as like crazy things, I'm like, I still do those. Not quite as often as college. College was like a crazy like
I think
quantity
some of
I didn't even realize those were bad.
Well, and it's like it's not always bad, but I think like I think back to college, I had a lot of friends that did stuff like that, but I was probably the only person that was like failing multiple classes because I was living that way, whereas my other friends would not do that at the expense of like their academic careers or their jobs and meanwhile I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna go to class because I'm hungover, because for whatever reason I felt like I needed to go stay out till 4 a.m. on like a Tuesday night, and now I'm hungover and I don't feel good and I want to feel good, so I'm probably just gonna like over caffeinate myself, then I'm going to crash, and then I'm going to lay in bed and watch porn all day. Like, it would be that kind of but again, my mind, like, and I think probably some deeply held belief systems I had were, like, if I am not having a good time, like, what's the point? Like, if I'm just not constantly having fun. And it's like, well, okay, but, like, maybe life's not always supposed to. It doesn't mean life has to be like super morbid, but it's not a big party all the time, and it's not constantly like. I think I just like when I was a kid, I can remember. This is gonna sound really crazy, but like I remember being in first grade, and like I was always a PM kid in like pre-K and kindergarten.
What's that?
So. You had your AM class and your PM class. So like AM class, you went at like 8 a.m. PM, you went at like 12 or something. So I was just like, I'm not a morning person now. I was not a morning person even as a little kid. And like, I remember like first grade, you had to go all day and I had to be at school at like 8 a.m. And I just remember like And you're gonna think I'm crazy because it's like, how do you remember this? I remember like walking to my first grade class, and I was so tired, and I just did not want to be awake that early in the morning. And I just remember like I told myself, and not in like a conscious way, but it's like you kind of have this thought of like, okay, when we're done with school, we're never ever getting up this early again. Like, when we're an adult, I sound schizophrenic. I sound like I'm like the voices. Yeah, but I'm like, I tell myself when I'm like 6, I'm like, okay, I can't wait till I'm an adult and I never have to get up early again because no one's gonna make me go to school. And that like mindset, like I remember like that moment, and then from there I was always just like trying to not feel bad all the time. And I just like randomly remembered that like a couple months ago when I was pumping gas, and maybe that was God just being like, hey, like there's something real deep in here that you're like kind of living out of, and it's kind of this belief that like, oh hey, like you're never gonna do things that you don't feel like doing or you don't want to do. And it's like, okay, like, so I think some of it is also just like spiritual, like, hey, like you don't have to just feel great all the time. And when I say feel great, I don't mean like, I'm not like giving myself permission to be depressed. I'm saying like, you don't always have to feel stimulated or like you're like on some high or some huge hill going down a roller coaster or some orgasm or something. You know what I mean? Like there's kind of this like
normalcy is okay.
Yeah. Normalcy is okay. Yeah, it's not always a thing of like going with whatever impulse you're feeling in any given moment. And so I think that like, yeah, I don't know. And so I don't know. I think they're all kind of connected. But the magnesium has at least helped me like, I think help my mind slow down enough where I can like start to actually think through like, okay, why do I feel this way? Because I believe this. Why do I believe this? Okay, maybe it's because somewhere someone told me this, or I had this experience and I felt like this was the best way to deal with it. Was always kind of just looking for some like, ugh.
It's almost like the variety of maturing in you and life experience being processed, and then you add like a supplement that seems to have some palpable effect. It's kind of like a culmination of like you finding like a lifestyle that is more tenable and that you want. It's not as the chaos isn't like coming into like things that you don't want it to affect. It's like, sure, going to Skyline at 1 a.m. isn't bad inherently, but if it like affects things that you do want to
what I'm doing
it
4 times a week, and it's like, I have an exam I should be studying.
My record's 4 times in 3 days.
Yeah. Well, it's like, and again, when you're like, you know, when you're in college, you do stuff like that. But it's like, I just would like, I would do that instead of like studying for exams that I really had to pass, you know, like.
Yeah.
Because again, it was a values thing. It's like, okay, like I'm here supposed to be getting an education and like spending all this time and money, but I'm prioritizing like, oh, this is what sounds fun or this is what feels good right now. And it's like
the short-term goals are fun,
which is like,
sacrificing the long-term.
I feel like a lot of that's not like super like, that's not a super profound, like people know that, like we know we're supposed to do that, but I think sometimes it's like implementing that in your life means like, oh, okay, like I'll have to make some other changes. Yeah. Like a bedtime or like I don't know.
Yeah. I think our culture, like from what I've noticed, is it like it's moved more into the short-term prioritization.
Yeah.
And so it's hard as an individual to choose like long-term thinking or like saving money versus just blowing it on XYZ. Like, it's like everything is like whatever, like the marketing minds or like culture or like our own inside of us just being like, I want to eat out every day this week, or I want to spend money on the next shiny thing. And so it's like all these things are pushing one way, but truly like you're finding that like the long term is worth like sacrificing some short term things and working toward.
Well, it's like, because I think we're so like our culture is so like about getting your dopamine kind of like
it's like a dopamine addicted culture,
which is, I think some of that's just literally coming from we've just normalized having these computers in our pockets that we can whip out at any second of the day and get that little hit. Like, you don't have to be bored anymore. You don't have to navigate awkward social interactions anymore. Like, that's just part of life. And I've even realized, like, when I'm not on my phone all the time, or when I'm not constantly escaping whatever my situation is, it's like I'm actually able to just, like, cope with, like, normal day-to-day stuff, whereas I feel like we're kind of at a place now where a lot of times we don't feel like we can cope, or just normal everyday inconveniences feel overwhelming because, like, we don't just have to. It's almost like
you just need to build that muscle.
Yeah,
almost.
like in your brain of like.
But
yeah,
we're pushing that down the road. We're like, I don't need to.
Yeah.
I can just like have that immediate gratification.
Yes. So you're kind of constantly doing that. Plus, depending on, I mean, some people, I guess, eat healthy, but like you're dumping sugar into your brain too. Like, that's my other thing is like, eating a ton of sugar and then way over caffeinating. At least I over caffeinate. I don't know. Because again, like at one point I was drinking like 8 or 9 cups of coffee a day and like didn't really see like, I mean, they weren't like huge. They were like, look, they were like Crossroads cups. So like,
I was probably at that level at some point.
Yeah,
I thought
like,
4 was like an okay amount.
Yeah.
I'm like, try not to drink that much.
Yeah, and it's like, I can't figure out why I'm so anxious all the time, or like why I like.
You're drunk on caffeine 24/7, and then you can't fall asleep because you're over caffeinated.
And then you're up till 3 a.m. So you're like, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna go to Skyline, and then I'm gonna watch some porn, and then I'm gonna. It just becomes this vicious cycle, and it's like, I think that is like you said, you're drunk on caffeine, but it really is, I think, like a form of insobriety.
Do you drink caffeine at all now?
I do, yeah. I drink like a coffee a day. Like I, grabbed a cold brew on the way here, but I limit it. And like, I think that's like kind of the biggest issue that like, just in general, culturally, I think we're kind of in this weird place of insobriety where we're not, even if we're not using like substances like alcohol, drugs, whatever, it's like, you might be living in this constant anxious mindset because you're constantly getting on the on your Facebook feed and you're not seeing anything that's hopeful because that doesn't sell. And not only that, the way that you're viewing people.
Doesn't sell.
Well, the way you're viewing people is very differently. You're dehumanizing them because now you're only seeing them by what their political views are. So it's like you can no longer see people as a whole person. Like, they didn't just wake up one day with those views. It's like, okay, they've got reasons and they've got history and they've got background. And I think that it's twisting the way that we're seeing each other and just the way that we're, like, when we get up every day, how we're viewing the world. And it's
like it's a downward spiral, and it sounds like you were able to pull out of that spiral, and then having not that magnesium is like the cure all, but it's like that's been a part of you, clarifying the chaos almost.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait a second, this is what's happening, and I want to change some of this.
It's helped. I think kind of my brain just get oh wait, okay, this might be why I'm thinking this way, or this might be why I'm going into my day thinking this is what this will be like if I don't know. It's like all these forms of insobriety because we're getting told, I feel like constantly, what life is like or what it's supposed to be like, from social media and whatnot. And then it's like we're missing the stuff that's happening right in front of us, whether it's the people or I'm even just thinking about when I'm with my nieces and nephews and I'll be, on my phone kind of zoned out in the world of Instagram or whatever is on there. And it's like, they're saying something to me and then I'm snapping at them because I'm like, don't you see I'm doing something here? Leave me alone. Meanwhile, it's like the people I'm looking at on Instagram, they don't know me. I don't know them, most of them. They're not in my life.
Yeah.
But the people that are in my life, I'm just kind of
that's like the cost of it.
Yeah. And it's I think
The
it's
real relationships and the actual presence.
And you're not being sober to that, because you can't control that as much the way that you can on social media. Because on social media you can get on, you can decide who you want to follow, who you want to be angry at. If you don't like something, you can adjust it. And I think we're under this idea that we can control a lot more than we actually can. And then I think that just makes us unable to cope with real life, where you can't control what people are saying and how they're saying it and what's going on. And so it's just a weird thing. I feel like now I'm just kind of ranting about how much I hate social media more than I am about magnesium.
And I just
ADD.
watched not the Social Dilemma. That's what I was thinking of as you said that. But I watched The Minimalist last night, and they also like allude to a lot of this stuff, which is interesting.
Yeah.
To like hear you ranting about that, because it's like a whole documentary, kind of like anti a lot of that.
Yeah, I think it's all connected. It's like, you're numbing out on social media, and then something happens, so then you're gonna go numb out and eat some garbage food that's impacting the way your mind is working, and then you're not gonna be getting. And I'm not saying that is the case for every single person that gets diagnosed with ADD or ADHD. Like, sometimes people do need medication. I'm not trying to say, like, all medication is, like, evil or fake or anything like that. But,
All right, we're back. And I think one of the things I just noticed was, in some of the larger things that you were talking about, was, like, almost like being okay with a paradox of, like, not medicating, but having, like, supplements, understanding that, like, chaos is going to have some part of life, and like you can't control everything, but there's also like some order that you can choose, and by changing habits or eating better or spiritually or whatever it might be, there's like almost like these paradoxes you have to understand and then recognize, like, okay, where is the delineation? Like, how much chaos versus order do you want to have? How much drugs versus, like, you're not saying like I'll never have any doctor touch me again, I'm never gonna like eat anything except salad from an organic farm. You're saying like there needs to be some level of balance, and like it's almost like this conversation has gotten broader to where I don't want to just keep bringing it back to magnesium, but it's almost like trying to keep that through line, like the magnesium is like a small tweak in like the intake, the physical intake that's been able to like bring a little bit of order, and then it's affected other things, but then there's also so much else that's also like a part of the equation, just with growth as it is, and this has been like something that you've added. So is that accurate?
The
kind of some of the summarizing.
I would say it's helped balance out some of maybe the way that I think. A lot of times I would think in these very kind of extreme terms, if that makes sense. And again, I think some of that goes back to like social media and some of that's just American culture, when you've got like two major political parties that are telling you, it's either all us or all them. And then I think you've got things like social media that are kind of furthering that divide. But I don't know. I think for me specifically, the magnesium has just helped me like slow down enough to like, oh, okay, like things don't have to be all that way or all that way. And I think that, if you have ADD or ADHD, that like it could be you may have just all kinds of different things that are impacting that. And I think that in general, we like to just assume that like we have that, like, say a doctor might have all the answers, because I think that feels less scary, if that makes sense. If we can say like, okay, the doctor is able to pinpoint exactly what this is, and I do trust doctors, but like I also don't think that they are necessarily always 100% right. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, oh, like it's also possible that the doctor could be wrong. But again, it's like science is evolving and progressing, and we're learning new things. So therefore, we don't know everything at this present moment. Hopefully, and again, it's like it's so weird how even that has become a thing of like, you either completely trust doctors, or it's like you don't trust anything they say. And it's like, well, it's like I feel like you could be somewhere in the middle, or it's like Yeah, I trust my doctor, Dr. Horsley, but like, I don't think he's right about everything.
Yeah.
Charlie.
Yeah.
Charlie Horsley. I probably don't need a name.
Is that his
drop him.
name?
Charlie Horsley. Yeah, Charlie Horse.
We're gonna have to bleep that out. Wow.
Yeah.
Charlie Horse.
Charlie Horsley. Yeah, I don't know. I just think like, yeah, Magnesium. And then I just think everyone needs to get off social media. I think if the internet shut down, well, I shouldn't say everyone.
What if it doesn't?
It won't.
And here, okay, yeah, exactly.
It won't. It won't. So
but everyone needs to self-select and get off there. Do you think like everyone would?
No, everyone won't. But I do think there's a lot of people that would be a lot happier
Yeah.
if they did. And I can't make people do that.
There's a few people I know who have just gotten off it, and they talk about how amazing it is. And I think I've taken a full month off in my entire life, and that was honestly great. But a thing that, but I've always like gotten back on it because I'm like, I don't want to miss out. There's like a healthy level of like that I hope that I have. I'm sure I don't have like complete health in my relationship to social media, but a recent explanation that really like helped me be more comfortable with being on it, even though I think it is, like you said, like if everyone could just get off, like that would be the best solution. But since we can't do that,
it's not gonna happen, yeah.
I just heard somebody call it, it's like the new public square. It's like you used to be able to get on a soapbox and talk at the town square, and you'd have whatever's happening there. And if you want to like say, hey, buy my thing, or like, hey, I'm cool, or hey, I'm a preacher, like there's people there, and like, you know, some of them you might not know. I don't know. I didn't live back in that era, but like now that has moved on to this privatized platform owned by a tech giant. Yeah. And like there's definitely some cons to that, for sure, but it's also like that's the replacement. And so it's like I think that's kind of like helped me understand like why I haven't been able to give up on it personally, even though like part of me definitely would want to because of the benefits. But it's like, can we truly like as a society get off unless everyone gets off, or they shut down all of them and we find something better? It's like I want us to keep ideating and like improving technology and like fixing the problems, but it's like in the interim I personally like think I have to be in the public square because I don't know, I just can't,
like you'd be missing
for my life and my personality. And that's obviously like if you can get off, that would be great. Like I would advocate for other people to get off, but I personally am like I need some of that in like a health, like, as healthy as I can have it.
I think the internet is great as far as like if we were just use it as like a news source or a place where, you know, we could get on there and we would read the full, you know, like you mentioned, the public square. So someone might get up there and be making these full statements and you'd be listening to the whole thing. And obviously you would still need to kind of do your own research and decide what you think about what that person is saying. I think with the way social media right now is working, it kind of just becomes what we're doing all day, every day.
Yeah.
And I think what it is, it's like, it's a lot of like half-baked ideas and thoughts. And even like stuff that I feel like I have put on social media is kind of like, okay, I'm putting like these bits and pieces out. It's like, yeah, if we could make it more of a platform where like, oh, okay, we're gonna be really dissecting this whole issue from bottom to top, all viewpoints, and kind of having a full conversation. But I just don't, I think because of how it's used in our day-to-day, that just won't happen, because it's rare that people sit down and will watch an hour or 2 hour long conversation. People are usually just sharing a headline of an article that they probably didn't even read. Mm-hmm. And I think that's more, so I think that comes down to your own personal usage and I think your personal responsibility to use it in that way. Because you are right, because you don't want to bury your head in the sand and just, you know, go off the grid and or maybe you do, I don't know. But I don't.
Part of me does, but
part of you. But it's
smaller
like,
part of me that can't win to the larger.
Do you want to do that? Do you want to do that because you're so overwhelmed by the amount of information that you're consuming? Like, imagine if you were only reading like news articles instead of getting on and reading people's opinions and hashtags and reposting from this. And I think that's where I get really I'm kind of like, I don't even know where to begin with this issue, because I'm seeing so many different views on it and so many different commentaries and quotes from it that I'm like, how do I even get to the bottom of it? And
are you on social now?
I deleted my Instagram this morning.
Wow. Is that your last one?
My last.
Your only
I'm
platform
still
that
on
was
Facebook.
active?
No, because I also had Snapchat that I would occasionally download, and I don't have good enough impulse control to be on those apps. Some people can. I don't. And I've deleted them in the past, and I'm just generally a much happier and much more productive person when I'm not on them. But I do have that fear of like, oh God, I'm going to miss something.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still on Facebook because I feel like Facebook, there's not as much like, Facebook is more, it's like an older audience. I feel like Facebook is not as in your face. Maybe I'm wrong because I don't get it on it. I just feel like you get
not
on Instagram.
Not in your Facebook.
Right, yeah. Like, I feel like Instagram and Snapchat are so, like, it's just too much. It's people's
TikTok?
Stories. TikTok, I haven't even touched it.
That's the dopamine max,
It is the
I
devil.
feel like.
Yes, I hate TikTok. I hate it.
Even though you haven't touched it.
Because, people send me TikToks.
It's just Vine rebranded.
Well, it reminds me of Vine,
day.
but to me, it's Vine with a very chaotic, like, it's just got I can't even explain what it is. It's just, TikTok just feels very sinister to me, and I can't explain why. Vine was like, oh, these are like clever. Vine was more like YouTube, but just like quicker.
Super
whereas
short, yeah.
I feel like TikTok is just like, some of them are funny that people send me, but I won't make an account because I know that I would be on it all the time and I would just be constantly scrolling. So I haven't even touched making a TikTok account.
Yeah.
And
you know yourself. The amount of chaos that it would introduce into the order that you have.
There's too much chaos in here. It's like
it would.
It
would just take it to 100% chaos.
Yeah, and other people I think can handle that more.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, but it tends to be a very extreme.
But nobody's
thing.
like prescribing like, okay, you're able to handle 2 hours of social media. It's like everybody has uninhibited access to any social media they want. So here's a question back to Magnesium. Like, what would you call the Magnesium of social media? Would it be email for you, or
It
iMessage? Would it be
turning my phone
Facebook?
off. It would just.
Or is there any like positive thing that like, other than just like chopping it out or deactivating the accounts?
I think it goes down to like, if you're able to define like, okay, what role do I want social media to play in my life? And I don't think we think a lot about why we're using social media. And so like, when I really stopped and thought about it, like why I've kept Facebook when maybe I've deleted other ones, some of it is because I have friends that I'm able to keep in contact with that live in other parts of the country, other parts of the world. I'm able to be supportive of different ministries I've worked with in other parts of the world, especially parts of the world where maybe they have limited access to traditional resources, like say advertising, so they're able to say like, hey, we're trying to raise money for this thing. Can you know what I mean? Like I think that is a benefit of it. And that's something that I'm like, okay, I still want to be able to be involved in things like that. And so I've kept Facebook because it I think serves that purpose. Whereas when I think about, okay, well, what's the point of me having an Instagram? Right now I'm not doing any kind of work that it would be financially beneficial for me. I'm not a freelance photographer or videographer, and I think, you know, if you can get on there and promote your work and make money doing it, go for it, you know, do it. But like, I don't really have anything right now that I'm using that for. I think a lot of times it kind of becomes just like this weird platform for me to try to advertise myself. Like I'm like getting on there, like, how are all the people that follow me going to perceive this thing in my life? Well, the reality is, other than maybe like 10 of those, maybe 10 of those followers are actually in my life enough to care.
Yeah.
And the rest of them, it's like, they don't care, and I don't really care. Like, and it's not that I don't, like, I care about them on a human level, but it's like, I don't need to see what all of these people are doing to try to measure myself up against it. Again, I think that's what Instagram ends up being for me, not for everybody else. And so, like, with...
I think everyone else, but maybe, like, unrecognized, or hopefully to a smaller degree, not to like put that on you, but at the same time, like, you've recognized, okay, this is an unhealthy level of that for me personally, and therefore I don't want this in my life, which could be just as much as anyone else, but you've at least recognized that maybe you have more of it.
Well, I think it just becomes a way that, like, we're viewing ourselves in the context of this platform.
It's like creating narcissists.
Yeah, and we've kind of said, and I don't think, nobody is consciously thinking this way of like, oh, how would this look on Instagram? But we are kind of letting what we're seeing online kind of set the standard for what life is supposed to look like, what it's supposed to feel like, what it's supposed to be like. Because I think you go on there and all you're seeing is what you should look like, what car you should be driving, you know, you should be going on all these trips all the time. You should be dating this person, you should be... And I think for me, it just kind of becomes a constant push to be dissatisfied with my own life.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I just was like, I'm not doing Instagram. And I think, like, just frankly, some of the content, I'm like, this is like porn, basically. Like, so the algorithm knows that, you know, I like to watch sweaty, shirtless men work out, right? It's like, I don't know them. I don't need to see that. I don't need to be...
They put it in your face because they know.
They do, because they know.
They know us better than a lot of
They
people.
know. And then it's like, you know, and... The algorithm, and it just... I don't know. So I guess, what's the magnesium of social media? I think it's just sitting down and being like, okay, when I've got maybe 100 years on this planet, and what do I want my life to look like? And then what role does social media play in that? And I think right now we're kind of saying, where do these parts of my life fit into my social media profile? And I think we need to flip it. Does that make sense? Kind of like, how do I make my life look like it's supposed to on social media, rather than just saying, okay, my life is my life, and this is the part that social media is going to play.
It's like the IG versus reality stuff, but then now reality is being shaped by IG.
Yes. So it's
like, and that's only going to get more significant as we see long term the effect.
And I think that people are using it to I don't know. I did like some people who I've seen just get married. I'm like, I feel like you just kind of wanted to have an Instagrammable wedding. Like, you didn't really want a good marriage. I'm not, like, maybe that's not my judgment to make. It's like, I think maybe deep down you kind of just wanted the ideal. Or it's like,
if your partner's just like beautiful, but like that's the primary reason you're with them, not because of a deeper connection.
Dude, I've met so many, like, not like so many, but just sometimes you just, or like customers that have come in at work where it's like they are both really hot people, but they are so unhappy. Like, right?
Yeah.
It's like they're so unhappy because it's like they looked. And I'm not blaming that on Instagram. There's I'm kind of drawing some really big conclusions. But it's like, it's like everyone's like, oh, like, seems like all the millennials and Gen Zers are moving to Denver just to move to Denver, and people are doing that, and they're like, oh, it didn't fix all my problems like I thought it would. And I just feel like there's like been this culture created, or even as I've watched, like, it's been really fascinating watching how people's faith has kind of shifted, or like, I think this whole deconstruction thing has been very fascinating to watch, in the sense that I think that, like, you should deconstruct your faith, you should be asking questions, but I'm wondering, like, how much of that taking place, so much of that I saw was taking place, like, on Instagram, on TikTok, and so then around that, this whole culture gets created of, this is what deconstruction is going to look like, or supposed to look like, and you're getting these half-baked ideas that are really way, in my opinion, way heavier than what an Instagram post or a 15-second TikTok can provide. Like, and I'm not saying that's everybody that was deconstructing. I'm just saying, like, some people that I knew, I was just like, well, get off Twitter, get off ex-evangelical Instagram, like, read some books. You know what I mean? Like, read some books on these things, or like, and so I just think that it's being used for things that are way weightier than what it can carry, and it's shifted. And I think in America, because we have always been such a media entertainment, Hollywood-centered culture, like, we've always had a big, invasive popular culture that was kind of telling us what we were supposed to look like, what our lives are supposed to look like. And I think in decades prior, it was just mostly through movies and Hollywood and TV. But you still got a break from those things when you were at school or when you were at work. You know what I mean? You didn't carry a TV in your pocket. And I think where social media is so different.
It's constant.
It's taken the place, and it's constant, and it's so many more voices. You know, and I think in some ways it's good because you have voices that weren't heard before, but in other ways it's the way that we process the information is, like, you know what I mean? It's you don't. It doesn't
it's
just
like shallower,
Yeah, and you're doing it till you go to bed. You're not having any time to actually think about, oh my gosh, what is my life? You're just constantly consuming.
And what is it amounting to?
Yeah.
Or the hot couple analogy, it's like, you don't have, like, the deep things that you both probably want, which is, like, deep satisfaction, value, connection, or whatever, but, like, you have the things that the world sees, like, attraction. Which is interesting. It's like it brings me back to, like, the short-term fun, or the easy solutions, or like the TikTok 15-second video versus reading a book. And I've heard, like, one of the best things about a book is it takes so damn long to write a book that you actually have to have a decent enough idea to stick through writing it and then to get it published, versus just writing 144 character thing and then that going viral or whatever. And it's like, I don't know, we just have to, there's so much to that. And it'll be very interesting to see in, like, 50 years when we're grandpas, like, what the longer term effects will be. Yeah,
what is the attention span going to be then? Is
but
it going to be like
back to Magnesium.
Back to Magnesium.
Just to beat a dead horse, like, 2 more times before we're done.
Horse.
I'm just curious.
Well, Magnesium.
Do you recommend it for me? I think.
I think it's good for anybody, because most Americans are deficient in it. You know what I mean?
Is it in, like, a standard multivitamin?
Yeah, you can buy it in a multivitamin.
What about zinc?
See,
or is that just if you're sick?
They tell you to take zinc. That was one of the things it suggested in this book I was reading.
Josh.
Dr. Josh. See, now I feel like...
No, I just want I want your personal experience more than, like, I mean, we can all Google these things,
yeah.
but it's like having a conversation about
Yeah.
this is interesting.
I started taking, I was originally just taking a magnesium supplement, and then I just started taking this one it's magnesium, zinc, calcium, and vitamin D all in one. And I actually don't know, I don't think it's working as well, weirdly enough. And
Not as focused.
yeah, I'm not. I don't know. Or maybe it's because I just recently accidentally ate some gluten or something.
Do French fries have gluten?
Nah.
Okay.
No, that's why I gotta get them.
Okay.
I'm sure there's some trace amounts. Like that doesn't. It's like if you eat. I had a lot of beer cheese last week, and that's got gluten in it. And like an
you're
hour
still,
after
you
I
get the
ate it,
half-life
I was
of
just
that.
like- I'm still suffering right now. Like it's a miracle that I made it here today. No, it just made me really foggy for like the next 24 hours or so.
I'm always foggy. Is that like abnormal?
Could be gluten, could be dairy. Anyway, back to magnesium. Yeah, you can just go get a little supplement, and I think like if you're an adult male, they say don't take more than 400 milligrams a day. At one point, I was taking 500 milligrams, and I was only about a week. I didn't die. It just made me really nauseous, and I was pooping a lot. But
Nice. So if you want nausea and poop.
nausea and a lot of poop, take that 500 milligrams of magnesium.
Well, just some background before we're done, and any final thoughts.
gosh.
But I don't know. I guess Josh, I know you through college, and we were in a small
Yeah.
group together, and I don't
Yeah.
see you very often now. But
The
we're
huddle.
in a little group text with one of our friends, and you brought up the magnesium thing, and that just like sparked my curiosity to have this whole conversation. So like, thank you
I feel
for
like
that.
we talked about everything but magnesium.
No,
What?
and I was like, I don't
Just
even know if
call-
there's a whole lot there,
just
but I want
call
to hear
it-
it in person, and
Call
I want to
it
like
back to magnesium. Like call it that. That's what the
just the
whole
callback.
clip. Back to magnesium. Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to say besides your Instagram handle?
I don't know. Shut your phone off. Drink some water. Yeah. Just get off the internet.
Nice. One final question related to that, like how does your you're a journalism major.
Yeah.
You're not working in journalism now, but you like have some like passion for that. It seems like social media is like the means by which journalism is like dispensed to society. Like one of the biggest means. I guess I'm just curious, like what your thoughts around that are, and if you like think journalism is dead, or like if you have like an angle that you want to approach it from, even with all your thoughts on social media.
I think with social media, what I think you see a lot of people sharing on social media is not journalism. It's a lot of opinion and op-ed pieces. And I think that sometimes we don't always know the difference between like what's supposed to be an opinion and what's supposed to be just like the straight facts of a story. And I think that comes down to I think you've got to do your due diligence of being like, okay, am I reading someone's opinion here? And it should say if it's an opinion, but again, we're not always I don't know that, I mean, I don't know.
It's like a cheaper version of journalism.
And I think the reason that opinion pieces are so big is because that gets people riled up, that gets more clicks, and that gets more dollars.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of straight journalism, like a lot of just journalistic writing is kind of boring. You're just kind of supposed to be stating facts. And that doesn't really sell. It's not as sexy.
Yeah. We're so accustomed to the sexy.
Yeah, you are.
We
Yeah.
don't want the straight facts. We want it like from a particular political angle or like marketing angle.
Yeah, and some people, I've heard some people say that because the way the journalism or like the news industry runs, like being for profit, that's why they have to do that. And I'm not really sure like if there is a way to create either newspapers or networks that their main goal is not, I mean, I understand they have to make money in order to stay in operation, but you know,
it's a fine line, like the
yeah.
monetization structures and incentives for clickbait and virology.
Virality?
Virology.
Virology.
The virus of misinformation and social media.
No, but yeah, it's like I don't
Instagram.
know. I don't know what the answer is as far as how do you get, because really it's the local newspapers that do a lot of the fact finding for the big cable news and whatnot, and since more and more of those are closing because they're not making as much money, I think that's where you're seeing more and more of an influx of opinion in the place of news. I don't know, and it's weird. It's a weird time, and I'm not saying that I have all the answers on journalism and the internet. But like even back when we were writing for the Odyssey, like when I would try to write more journalistic pieces, I always tried to find like 4 articles from different like I'd find one from like MSNBC and one from Fox News, and kind of like from there I was better able to weed out, okay, this seems to be like an opinion, or at least like they seem to be a little more heavy-handed on these facts about it than this network was. And I don't know, try to
seek balance, an appropriate level of balance.
Seek some balance.